They used to say the sun never set on the British Empire. It ruled the seas, the money, and the culture of the entire world. Today, that empire is fighting a war it never expected, a war inside its own borders. The nation that once controlled a quarter of the planet now struggles to control its own streets, an overloaded health system, prices climbing every month, social tension boiling over. For years, politicians swore the country was heading the right way. More and more people feel something went badly wrong. To understand how deep this goes, you have to start with one single day, a day when Britain caught fire. July 30th, 2024, London, Birmingham, Manchester. Thousands of people poured into the streets at once, and the whole country was watching. The trigger was horrifying. 3 young girls had been murdered in Southport by a 17-year-old attacker. A quiet dance class turned into a national nightmare. The anger exploded into demands. Tighter migration laws, real protection for citizens, immediate deportation of illegal migrants. In some cities, police cars were set on fire in the middle of the road. By the end of it, more than 400 people had been arrested. Over 100 were formally charged, and Southport became a symbol of a chaos that had been building for years. But then the government did something that shocked people even more. It did not just go after rioters in the street, it went after people typing on their phones. Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced sentences for people who, according to the state, incited violence online. The verdicts came down fast, and a wave of mass arrests began. Police started combing through social media. They arrested people whose posts were labeled as incitement to hatred. This is where the story gets genuinely strange. Take Jordan Parler, 28 years old. He got 20 months in prison for a Facebook post calling for an attack on a hotel housing asylum seekers. Then Tyler K, 26, from Northampton. His sentence was even longer, 38 months behind bars for a post encouraging arson, and these two were only the beginning. Here is the part almost nobody talks about. In 2024, Britain did not release exact numbers on arrests for online posts, but journalists at the Times dug up an older figure. Back in 2017, over 3,300 people were detained for things they said online. That is roughly 9 people every single day, 9 people a day, for words on a screen. Suddenly, voices were everywhere. Was Britain turning into a country that hunts its own people for their opinions? To many, it no longer felt like a theory. The government defended every decision. They said they were fighting extremism and stopping incitement to violence, and on paper, that sounds reasonable. But the other side asked a sharper question. Is this really about stopping violence, or is it about crushing anyone who disagrees? People started to fear that one wrong opinion online could end in an arrest. And this is not the first time Britain has reached for heavy control of information. In the 20th century, the state censored films and newspapers, terrified of revolution and the spread of communism. Even in the 60s and 70s, content seen as harmful to social values was cut and banned. But today is completely different. Back then, they censored the media. Now, any ordinary person can become the inconvenient voice. British society split right down the middle. Some say chasing hate speech is necessary for safety. Others say it plainly. This is the end of free speech. And it may only be starting. Leaders are already promising tougher rules on disinformation, while swearing that free speech will always be protected. But once you start censoring people, it is very hard to stop. But these problems did not appear out of nowhere. They are the result of decisions made years ago. Decisions that were supposed to change everything. Rewind to 2016, many Britons decided the European Union no longer worked in their favor. Too many rules from Brussels, too little control over their own borders. One phrase caught fire: take back control, full power over the economy, over the borders, over the laws, no directives forced from abroad. It sounded like the perfect plan. In the referendum, 52% voted to leave the European Union. It was one of the most important votes in the country's history, a decision meant to open a brand new chapter. Supporters were certain their nation would shape its own destiny and reclaim its old glory. Let's get Brexit done, they said. Take back our money, our borders, and our laws. Then in 2020, Brexit became reality, and the first cracks appeared almost instantly. Many companies started to collapse. Legal chaos hit imports and exports hard. Britons did not have to wait long to feel it. Prices in the shops shot up, imported goods got more expensive, and wages simply could not keep up with the rising cost of living. The pound lost value, foreign investors held their breath. The Bank of England started recording a drop in investment. An economy that was supposed to boom began to slow down. But it was not only about prices. After Brexit, around 600,000 workers from the EU left Britain. Companies suddenly faced huge staff shortages, and the government that promised local workers to replace them had no real plan. Here is the twist. In 2016, the majority backed Brexit. By 2024, around 60% of Britons believe it was a mistake. Sovereignty was supposed to bring control. Instead of stability, it brought stagnation. Some firms moved abroad, investors began avoiding London, and the pound never returned to its old value. The worst part is that there is no easy way back. Rejoining the Union is politically almost impossible. And the story gets stranger because Brexit had one huge promise above all others: control over the borders, the power to finally decide who could settle on the islands. Britons believed Brexit would mean fewer immigrants. Reality did the exact opposite. In 2022, net migration hit a record 745,000 people, a record high right after the vote to reduce it. But one huge thing changed. Migrants from the EU really did start leaving. Poles, Romanians, and Lithuanians went home or moved to Germany and Ireland. In their place, others arrived. In 2022 alone, over 1 million people arrived from outside the EU. The largest numbers came from India, Nigeria, Pakistan, and China. The government launched new visa programs, hoping they would fill the gaps in the economy. The plan was simple. If Britons no longer wanted certain jobs, newcomers would do them. But reality showed something else. Instead of filling key sectors, more and more people leaned on the benefit system. A budget already strained by the pandemic and Brexit now carried an even heavier load, and housing became a nightmare. Rents soared, available homes dropped to record lows. Britons, fighting their own cost of living crisis, had to watch the state spend billions on housing new arrivals. Public anger boiled over fast, and on the streets, a darker trend was rising. In big cities like London, Manchester, and Birmingham, brutal street attacks were climbing. The most alarming trend was the rise in knife crime. Every day, cities saw more than a dozen such incidents. A feeling spread that the state had lost control of the streets, that the police were more focused on political correctness than on stopping real crime. People began to fear leaving home after dark. And then there is the crown jewel that is cracking, the NHS. The National Health Service, once admired across the entire world, is now pushed to the very edge of exhaustion. One of the biggest problems is a shortage of medical staff. After Brexit, many nurses and doctors from EU countries chose to leave Britain. Hospitals across the country are now overloaded. You wait months for an operation. You wait even longer to see a specialist. Government after government promised to fix it. None of them delivered. And the party that ran the country for years is now collapsing. After years without a strong leader, the Conservatives became a symbol of chaos and incompetence. Their support crashed. In just a few years, Britain burned through 5 prime ministers. After Boris Johnson fell in a storm of scandals, came a short and catastrophic term. Liz Truss lasted only 49 days. Her economic decisions sent the pound crashing. It was one of the biggest financial shocks in the country's modern history. Rishi Sunak took over next, but he could not rebuild trust. His government failed to tame inflation, the energy crisis, and the collapse in the health service. And the fall of the Conservatives may trigger something far bigger, the breakup of the United Kingdom itself. Scotland is demanding a second independence referendum louder than ever. Separatist feeling in Northern Ireland is stronger than at any time in memory. The cracks are turning into fault lines. If the political chaos keeps deepening, Britain could face a real risk of falling apart. A decade ago, that idea seemed impossible. Today, it is being discussed openly. They once said the sun never set on Britain. Today, it looks like it finally has. And here is the last twist. It is not setting on Britain alone. Very similar problems are now spreading through Australia, and that is a story of its own.